Coming up on 5 Minute News. New plan to stem border migration as COVID restrictions end. NAACP lawsuit says Minneapolis police spied on its members. And Kansas imposes sweeping anti-trans bathroom laws. It's Friday, April 28. I'm Anthony Davis. With COVID-19 immigration restrictions set to expire, the Biden administration yesterday announced measures meant to stop migrants from illegally crossing the US-Mexico border, both by cracking down on many of those who do come and by creating new pathways meant to offer an alternative to the dangerous journey. The effort includes opening processing centers outside the United States for people fleeing violence and poverty to apply and fly in legally and settle in the United States, Spain, or Canada. The first processing centers will open in Guatemala and Colombia, with others expected to follow. The administration also plans to swiftly screen migrants seeking asylum at the border itself, quickly deport those deemed as not being qualified, and penalizing people who cross illegally into the US or illegally through another country on their way to the US border. But it's unclear whether the measures will do much to slow the tide of migrants fleeing countries marred by political and economic strife. Further increasing the pressure is the looming end of public health rules instituted amid the pandemic that allowed for quickly expelling many migrants and is set to expire on May 11. Immigration has been a central issue for Biden throughout his presidency, with GOP leaders hammering him as soft on border security. Immigrant advocates, meanwhile, argue that the president is abandoning humanitarian efforts meant to keep migrants from coming illegally. The topic isn't going away. As he announces his 2024 re-election bid, Biden is trying to strike a balance that could be difficult to achieve, particularly if crowds of migrants end up in border facilities after May 11. The administration has also repeatedly pointed to Congress, saying it has been unable to come to an agreement on comprehensive immigration reform. The city of Minneapolis is now facing a federal lawsuit that claims city police officers spied on members of the local chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People for years without any legitimate purpose. The lawsuit, filed Wednesday morning by the University of Minnesota Law School's Racial Justice Law Clinic on behalf of the NAACP, comes a year after the Minnesota Department of Human Rights released its report that said the city and its police department have a pattern or practice of race discrimination. Part of that report included a statement that MPD uses covert social media to target black leaders, black organizations, including the NAACP, and criticize elected officials without any public safety purpose or any apparent oversight and accountability mechanisms. Just 4 weeks ago, the city finalized a consent decree with the Department of Human Rights that provides a framework for significant changes in the police department. The lawsuit says the police officers' surveillance of NAACP members violates the members' First and 14th Amendment rights and discriminates against them. The lawsuit calls for compensatory relief in an amount to be determined at trial and punitive damages against the involved officers. Republican legislators in Kansas enacted what may be the most sweeping transgender bathroom law in the U.S. on Thursday, overriding the Democratic governor's veto of the measure without having a clear idea of how their new law will be enforced. The vote in the House was 84-40, giving supporters exactly the two-thirds majority they needed to override Governor Laura Kelly's action. The vote in the Senate on Wednesday was 28-12, and the new law will take effect July 1st. At least 8 other states have enacted laws preventing transgender people from using the restrooms associated with their gender identities, but most of them apply to schools. The Kansas law applies also to locker rooms, prisons, domestic violence shelters, and rape crisis centers. Republican legislators argued that they're responding to people's concerns about transgender women sharing bathrooms, locker rooms, and other spaces with cisgender women and girls. They repeatedly promised that the bill would prevent that. Kansas House Speaker Dan Hawkins, a Wichita Republican, told GOP colleagues after the vote that the override was truly the icing on the cake among conservative policy victories this year. The Kansas law is different than most other states' law in that it legally defines male and female based on the sex assigned at birth and declares that distinctions between the sexes in bathrooms and other spaces serves the important governmental objectives of protecting health, safety, and privacy. The bill is written broadly enough to apply to any separate spaces for men and women, and Kelly's office said could prevent transgender women from participating in state programs for women, including female hunters and farmers. As written, it also prevents transgender people from changing the gender markers on their driver's licenses, though it wasn't clear whether that change would occur without a lawsuit. Critics of the new law believe it is an attempt to legally erase transgender people, while also refusing to recognize gender fluid, gender non-conforming, and non-binary people. They argued that the bill's vagueness will prompt harassment of transgender people. You can subscribe to the 5-Minute News Patreon for bonus videos, commentary, and more. Go to patreon.com/5-Minute News.